Intercultural relationships are relationships that are formed between individuals from different cultures. It's a big world full of difference and diversity. How you see others is influenced by your own cultural perspective, and how others see you is influenced by their cultural perspective. The dissimilarities probably are most prominent in the early stage of relational development, when people tend to exchange less personal information. We are here to tell you intercultural relationships are possible, and we have all probably done this. According to the research of Pew Research Center, nowadays 12% of new marriages in the US occur between spouses of different races.
The person that we will interview in this video is Nadia Kamilia binti Khairuzaman, who studied abroad in Australia for 2 years. How did you feel about meeting members of the other culture for the first time? Were there any challenges that you have faced during the interaction?
There were some challenges I faced, such as the first one is cultural barriers. When they would talk, the Australians would talk about certain things within their culture, and that can make you one that comes from a different culture excluded because you don't know what's to talk about within that culture. For example, they will talk about Australian politics or Australian sports. The stereotype where they will exclaim in surprise like, "Oh wow, you can speak really good English." Yeah, that is one stereotype that I faced when I went there. But there's nothing much you can do because this stereotype is embedded in other cultures too. It's also quite nervous as well because I want to present like a first good impression of me and my culture towards them.
Did you find it to be a smooth or difficult pathway for you to fit into the culture at first?
It was quite difficult for me at first because I had to get over my culture shock of being in Australia, and then I had to learn the do's and don'ts first of the culture. But as I made local friends, it made it easier for me to transition to the Australian lifestyle and appreciate the culture due to their help and advice.
Challenges of intercultural relationships may include learning customs and traditions of the other culture. Some may also find it challenging in terms of relating to people of the other culture, as this may lead to identifying stereotypes and prejudices that contributes misinformation of the cultural group. Other than that, it also includes fear and discomfort due to very little familiarity of the other culture, uncertainty and confusion on how to react with different behaviors of a different culture. This is because variation in culture usually exhibits differences in ways of communication that affects friendship development. What were your expectations before going to Australia? Did you encounter any surprises when you began interacting with the members of the culture?
I did encounter a few surprises in Australia. For example, I found out that the Australians are really chill and laid back. Actually, I expected this before I came to Australia, but just seeing it in real life really did shock me to see them like that. I expected Australians to be friendly. Well, I have a mixed review about this. There are some Australians that can connect with you, like connect with the international students well, but there are some Australians that make it hard to break down the cultural barriers between you and them, such as because they prefer to hang out with people from their own culture instead of just giving their time to break it down and interact with international students. It makes me feel that some Aussies are unfriendly due to them not willing to break down those cultural barriers itself.
Were there any differences or similarities in terms of friendship compared to your own country? Describe what are the differences.
It takes quite a while to make friends with people from other culture compared to like making friends within your own culture, and which is easier because you can bond towards the same cultural interests you have. It takes longer also because you also need to know the do's and don'ts of each culture. I also found the Australians to be more open-minded, and so it makes it easier to talk to them about almost anything.
What advice would you give to people unfamiliar with the culture about forming relationships with members of this culture?
Be respectful and friendly, because generally Australians value these traits and they respect these traits. Be open-minded but don't allow any offensive remarks, and be friends with people who respect you. I found out that just by regularly interacting with them, is to the point that we feel comfortable with you, is one way to overcome it. Don't get angry or frustrated when you cannot connect with other Australians or break down those cultural barriers. It is not your fault, so just go and find other people or other Australians that can and are willing to connect with you.
Intercultural relationships takes time to build understanding. It requires patience to learn how to trust. It is often exhausting when we try to communicate effectively, but they are essential to our survival as a people. Without interacting with one another, the world would not be the place it is today.